My name is Roosevelt, and at 32 years old, I never expected to be the center of attention at my sister Amanda's wedding. I was happy for her, but dreading attending solo after my recent breakup. The Wright family had always made me feel like an outsider, but I had no idea that walking into that reception alone would trigger such mockery. Or that by the end of the night, the bride's grandfather would stand before everyone and bow to me. Let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever felt like an outsider at a family gathering. What I'm about to share changed everything for me. I should probably start by telling you a bit more about myself. I work as a cybersecurity engineer for a major tech company in Seattle. Most people hear that and their eyes glaze over, which is partly why I tend to keep to myself at social gatherings. My life revolves around code, security protocols, and preventing digital disasters that most people never even know were possible. It is fulfilling work, but it does make for awkward conversations at parties when someone asks what I do. Amanda is 4 years younger than me, and we have always been close despite our different paths in life. While I disappeared into the digital world, she became a high school English teacher with this incredible gift for connecting with people. She has always been the only person who truly gets me. Growing up, when other kids thought I was weird for spending weekends coding instead of playing sports, Amanda would defend me fiercely. She would sit next to me for hours, reading her books while I worked on my computer projects, just so I wouldn't feel alone. When she called me 2 years ago, bubbling with excitement about meeting someone special, I was genuinely happy for her. Thomas Wright seemed perfect on paper. Handsome, well-educated, and genuinely in love with my sister. The storybook romance between the dedicated high school teacher and the successful businessman blossomed quickly. He would surprise her with thoughtful gifts related to her favorite books, and she brought warmth and authenticity to his otherwise rigid, business-focused life. What Amanda failed to mention initially was that Thomas wasn't just any businessman. The Wright family owned a chain of luxury hotels spanning 3 continents. They were old money, with connections in politics and high society that made my modest upbringing seem almost comically simple by comparison. My first meeting with the Wright family remains etched in my memory. Amanda had invited me to a dinner at one of their downtown hotels, insisting that I needed to meet Thomas's family before things got really serious. I showed up in what I thought was a nice button-down shirt and slacks, only to find myself underdressed among men in tailored suits and women draped in designer dresses and jewelry that probably cost more than my annual salary. I still remember how Catherine, Thomas's older sister, looked me up and down when Amanda introduced us. Her smile never reached her eyes as she asked what I did for a living. When I explained my cybersecurity work, she nodded politely before quickly turning the conversation to someone she deemed more interesting. James, Thomas's brother, was similarly dismissive, making a joke about how I could help fix their mother's email problems, since that must be what computer people do. Throughout that evening, I felt like an exhibit at a museum rather than a potential family member. They asked questions that seemed designed to highlight the differences between our worlds, rather than find common ground. The only one who showed genuine interest was Stanley Wright, Thomas's grandfather and the patriarch who had built their hotel empire from a single property 50 years ago. He asked thoughtful questions about cybersecurity challenges and actually listened to my answers. Fast forward to 3 weeks before Amanda's wedding. I had been dating Jessica for almost 3 years, and everyone expected her to be my plus one at the ceremony. Jessica was a marketing executive I had met at a company event, beautiful and charismatic in all the ways I wasn't. But as the wedding approached, our relationship began to unravel. Jessica couldn't understand why I would sometimes work through the night when security threats emerged. She grew frustrated with my inability to disconnect from work, to attend her company parties without checking my phone for alerts. The final straw came when I canceled our anniversary dinner because of a ransomware attack targeting a major client. 2 weeks before Amanda's wedding, Jessica ended things, telling me she needed someone who could be fully present in a relationship. The day after our breakup, Amanda called to finalize some wedding details. I could hear the excitement in her voice as she described the venue, the flowers, and all the right family members flying in from around the world. "So is Jessica still allergic to seafood?" "I need to let the caterer know," she asked casually. I took a deep breath before answering. "Actually, Jessica won't be coming. We broke up." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Oh, Roosevelt," Amanda finally said, her voice softening. "I am so sorry." "What happened?" I gave her the abbreviated version, downplaying my heartbreak. The last thing I wanted was to cast a shadow over her happiness. "Are you still coming to the wedding?" she asked, trying and failing to hide the worry in her voice. Part of me wanted to make an excuse. The thought of facing the right family alone, of enduring their pitying or judgmental glances, made my stomach churn. But this was Amanda, my sister, my greatest supporter. "Of course I am coming," I assured her. "This is your day, and nothing would keep me away." "The rights can be a lot," Amanda admitted. "But they will come around once they get to know you better." I wasn't convinced, but I promised her I would be there, smiling and supportive, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. What I didn't tell Amanda was how truly alone I felt. Our parents had passed away years ago, our father from a heart attack when I was in college, our mother from cancer just 2 years after. Without Jessica, without our parents, I would be the solo marshal at an event dominated by the Wright family and their illustrious friends. But for Amanda, I would endure it. Little did I know that walking into that wedding alone would set in motion events that would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire Wright family legacy. The Wright family had chosen to host the wedding at their flagship property, the Grand Wright Hotel and Resort in the Hamptons. When my rideshare pulled up to the entrance, I felt distinctly out of place. The limestone facade gleamed in the afternoon sun. Bellhops in crisp uniforms rushed to assist guests with Louis Vuitton luggage, and a fountain featuring a marble sculpture of Poseidon dominated the circular driveway. I checked in at the front desk, where the receptionist's professional smile faltered slightly when I gave my name. "Ah, Mr. Marshall, the bride's brother," she said, tapping at her computer. "We have you in one of our garden view rooms." I later learned from Amanda that most family members had been given ocean view suites. After settling into my room, I headed to the welcome dinner in one of the hotel's private dining rooms. Amanda spotted me immediately, breaking away from a conversation to rush over and envelop me in a tight hug. "You made it," she exclaimed, pulling back to examine my face. "How are you holding up?" "I am fine," I assured her, forcing a smile. "This place is incredible." A shadow of concern crossed her face. "Listen, I told Thomas about you and Jessica. He understands if you are not in a party mood, but his family has been asking about you." Before I could respond, Thomas appeared beside her, extending his hand. "Roosevelt, glad you could make it. Amanda has been worried you might not come. And miss my only sister's wedding." "Not a chance," I shook his hand firmly. As Thomas led us through the crowd, I became acutely aware of the glances being cast in my direction. Catherine Wright, impeccable in a designer dress, whispered something to her husband as I passed. A cousin whose name I couldn't recall raised an eyebrow and smirked. I caught fragments of conversation. "Came alone, couldn't even keep a girlfriend. What does he do again?" At dinner, I found myself seated at a table far from Amanda, surrounded by distant Wright relatives who made minimal effort to include me in their conversations about vacation homes and boarding schools. I picked at my food, wishing I could retreat to my room with my laptop and the comfort of code that either worked or didn't, without all these complicated social nuances. As servers cleared the dessert plates, I slipped out onto the terrace for some air. The night was clear, stars visible despite the hotel's lights, and the sound of waves breaking on the shore provided a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" a voice came from behind me. I turned to find Stanley Wright, Thomas's grandfather, walking slowly toward me with the aid of a polished wooden cane. At 82, he still carried himself with remarkable dignity, his tailored suit fitting perfectly on his thin frame. "It is," I agreed, straightening up reflexively. "You know, in all my years owning this place, I never tire of this view." He came to stand beside me at the railing. You are Amanda's brother, correct? The computer expert. I was surprised he remembered. Yes, sir. Roosevelt Marshall. I work in cybersecurity. Fascinating field, he said, genuinely interested. In my day, security meant a good lock and a trustworthy night watchman. Now it is all digital, isn't it? Invisible enemies. For the first time that evening, I found myself engaged in a genuine conversation. Stanley asked thoughtful questions about my work, nodding with understanding as I explained concepts that usually caused people's eyes to glaze over. After a while, the conversation shifted to the wedding. This union means a great deal to our family, Stanley said, his expression growing more serious. More than most realize. How so? I asked. Stanley glanced around before lowering his voice. The hotel business isn't what it once was. Online booking platforms taking their cut, luxury home rentals eating into our market share. This wedding is not just a personal celebration, it is also a business opportunity. Many of our investors and potential partners are attending. I wasn't sure why he was confiding this in me, but I nodded in understanding. Thomas is being groomed to take over when I step down, Stanley continued. This wedding, its success, its image. It all matters for the future of Wright Hotels. He patted my shoulder. But listen to me rambling about business when we should be celebrating. Just know that your sister is joining a family that takes care of its own. As Stanley walked away, I couldn't help but feel there was something beneath his words, a current of anxiety that didn't match the confident exterior the Wright family projected. Later that night, as I sat in my room catching up on work emails, I noticed something odd about the hotel's Wi-Fi connection. As a habit born from professional paranoia, I always ran a basic security check on networks I connected to. The Wright Hotel's guest network showed unusual traffic patterns, data packets being routed to servers that had no business being involved in a hotel's operations. Most people would have ignored it, but something felt off. I dug deeper, using specialized tools I had developed for my work. What I discovered sent a chill down my spine. Someone was executing a sophisticated attack on the Wright Hotel's financial system, attempting to access everything from payroll to investor accounts. The attack was cleverly disguised, piggybacking on the increased network traffic from wedding guests. If successful, it could potentially siphon millions of dollars from the company accounts, or worse, steal sensitive financial data of their wealthy clientele. Given what Stanley had shared about the business facing challenges, such an attack could be devastating. I checked the time. 1:14 a.m. The wedding was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. tomorrow. I debated whether to alert hotel security immediately, but hesitated. Would they even understand what I was talking about? Would they believe me, or see me as the odd brother-in-law making trouble? Given the cold reception I had received, I wasn't confident my warnings would be taken seriously. Instead, I decided to investigate further, to gather concrete evidence before approaching anyone. This was what I was trained to do, after all. I would spend the night tracking the attack, documenting everything, and approach Stanley directly in the morning with irrefutable proof. As dawn broke, I was still hunched over my laptop, following digital breadcrumbs through the Wright Hotel's network. What I uncovered was more alarming than I initially thought. By morning, my eyes burned from staring at screens all night, but I had uncovered the full extent of the attack. The hackers had been meticulously planning this for months, planting backdoors throughout the Wright Hotel's network. They had timed their main assault to coincide with the wedding, when attention would be diverted and unusual network activity might be attributed to guests. My technical analysis revealed sophisticated methods that pointed to a professional job. This wasn't random. It was targeted. The attackers knew exactly what they were looking for, navigating directly to the most sensitive financial systems. They were attempting to transfer funds to a complex web of offshore accounts, while simultaneously gathering financial data on the Wright's wealthiest clients. After piecing together fragmented data packets, I identified the likely culprit. Meridian Luxury Properties, a competing hotel chain that had recently tried to acquire several Wright properties. Their digital fingerprints weren't obvious, but the attack originated from servers linked to shell companies I traced back to Meridian's corporate structure. They weren't just trying to steal money. They were attempting to destabilize Wright hotels enough to force a sale. With evidence compiled, I showered quickly and headed downstairs, determined to find Stanley before the day's wedding preparations consumed everyone's attention. The hotel lobby bustled with activity, florists arranging elaborate displays, staff setting up additional security for high-profile guests, and family members rushing about with last-minute tasks. I spotted Stanley near the concierge desk, deep in conversation with an older man in an expensive suit. I approached cautiously, waiting for a break in their discussion. "Mr. Wright," I said when they paused, "I need to speak with you urgently. It's about your network security." Stanley glanced at me with mild confusion. "Roosevelt, good morning. This is hardly the time. I understand, but this really can't wait. Your company is under attack." The man beside Stanley frowned. "Is everything all right, Stanley?" "Just fine, Charles. This is the bride's brother. Roosevelt, this is Charles Winfield, one of our board members." Charles looked me over with thinly veiled dismissal. "Perhaps this conversation can wait until after the festivities." "It really can't," I insisted. "I've discovered a major security breach in your network. Someone is actively trying to—" "Roosevelt," Stanley interrupted gently but firmly, "I appreciate your concern, but we have state-of-the-art security systems. Today is Thomas and Amanda's wedding day. Whatever this is, it can surely be addressed tomorrow." Before I could protest further, Catherine approached, elegant in a silk robe, clearly in the midst of wedding preparations. "Grandpa, the photographer needs you for the family portraits," she said, barely acknowledging my presence. When she noticed my disheveled appearance and the intensity of my expression, she added, "Is everything okay?" "Roosevelt here believes there's some issue with our computer systems," Stanley explained. Catherine's expression shifted from concern to irritation. "Today, you're bringing tech problems to my grandfather on the day of my brother's wedding." "It's not just a tech problem," I tried to explain. "Your company's financial data is being. Our IT department has everything under control," she cut me off. "We employ top professionals." "I am a top professional," I countered, my frustration mounting. "This is exactly what I do for a living." Catherine's laugh was like ice water. "Yes, Amanda mentioned you fix computers or something. Our company uses an entire team from a leading cybersecurity firm. No offense, but I think they have it covered." Stanley looked uncomfortable, but made no move to contradict his granddaughter. "Roosevelt, perhaps you could email the details to our IT department. For now, we really must focus on the wedding." As they walked away, I heard Catherine murmur, "First he shows up alone, now this. What is Amanda thinking?" Defeated but determined, I tried approaching other family members throughout the morning. James Wright dismissed me immediately. "Maybe you are just trying to make yourself feel important since you came solo." His wife actually laughed at this, as though my relationship status somehow invalidated my professional expertise. Thomas's father, Richard Wright, was more polite but equally dismissive. "Son, I appreciate your concern, but our security team costs us 7 figures annually. I am sure they would have detected any issues." With each rejection, the clock ticked closer to both the wedding and what I knew would be a financial disaster for the Wright family. By noon, I had hit a wall. No one would listen, and I had no direct access to their main security systems to implement countermeasures. I returned to my room, staring at my laptop screen where alerts continued to show the attack progressing. The hackers were growing bolder, preparing for their final move that would likely come during the ceremony itself, when all key personnel would be occupied. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Amanda, radiant in her bridal robe, her hair partially done for the ceremony. "Roosevelt, are you okay? Catherine said you were acting strange this morning." I hesitated, not wanting to worry her on her wedding day. Everything's fine. Just a work thing I noticed. Amanda knew me too well. You look like you haven't slept. What's going on? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. The Wright Hotel's network is under attack. A sophisticated one. I tried to tell Stanley and others, but no one will listen. Amanda's eyes widened. Are you sure? It's what I do, Amanda. Yes, I am sure. By the time everyone realizes what's happening, it will be too late. My sister bit her lip thinking. Can you stop it? Potentially, but I would need access to their main security infrastructure, which requires authorization I don't have. Amanda checked the time. The ceremony is in 4 hours. Do what you can from here. I will try to get Thomas to listen, but... Don't worry about it, I said firmly. This is your wedding day. I will figure something out. After she left, I made a decision. If no one would grant me official access, I would have to use more creative methods. What I was considering fell into a gray area ethically and possibly legally. But the alternative was watching my sister's new family suffer a devastating attack that could impact their livelihood and reputation. I spent the next 3 hours executing what would technically be considered a hack of my own, breaking into the Wright Hotel's security infrastructure to deploy countermeasures against the attackers. Using techniques I normally reserved for authorized penetration testing, I worked my way through their defenses, careful to document every step for later explanation. The irony wasn't lost on me, hacking into a system to prevent it from being hacked. But as I identified and closed backdoors, diverted malicious traffic, and strengthened vulnerable points, I knew I was racing against time. With just 45 minutes until the ceremony, I implemented my final countermeasures, effectively cutting off the attackers' access and trapping them in a honeypot, a decoy system designed to gather information about their methods and identities. I also set up alerts that would go directly to Wright Hotel's official security team with detailed explanations of what had happened. The immediate danger averted, I rushed to shower and change for the wedding. Looking in the mirror as I adjusted my tie, I saw the toll of the sleepless night on my face. Dark circles underlined my eyes, and even my best suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in my posture. But I had done what needed to be done, whether the Wright family appreciated it or not. As I hurried toward the beachfront where the ceremony would take place, I had no idea that my actions would soon transform me from outsider to unexpected hero in the eyes of the very people who had dismissed me. I slipped into the ceremony just as the music started, taking a seat in the back row on the bride's side. The setting was breathtaking, white chairs on the immaculate beach, an arch of white roses and blue hydrangeas framing the ocean view, and the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over everything. Amanda was stunning as she walked down the aisle, our late father's favorite song playing softly in the background. Despite my exhaustion and the tension of the morning, seeing my sister's happiness brought tears to my eyes. Thomas looked at her with genuine adoration, and for a moment I forgot about the Wright family's dismissiveness, the cyber attack, all of it. The ceremony was brief but beautiful. As Amanda and Thomas exchanged vows, I caught Stanley watching them with a mixture of pride and something that looked almost like worry. He kept checking his phone discreetly, and I wondered if the security team had finally noticed what I had detected hours ago. After the ceremony, guests moved to the grand ballroom for the reception. I entered alone, painfully aware of being the only person without a +1 among the hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. Several people glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I heard whispers as I passed. That is the brother, right? Came by himself, poor thing. I heard his girlfriend dumped him right before the wedding. I kept my head high, reminding myself I was there for Amanda. The reception space was extravagant. Crystal chandeliers, centerpieces of orchids and roses, a live orchestra playing softly as servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I found my assigned table near the back of the room, far from the wedding party. My table mates were distant acquaintances of the Wright family, who made minimal effort to include me in their conversation. I sipped my champagne slowly, wishing the evening would pass quickly. During dinner, I excused myself to get some air. Near the kitchen entrance, I encountered Catherine and two of her friends, champagne flutes in hand. They fell silent as I approached, exchanging glances. "Roosevelt," Catherine said, her voice carrying a hint of mockery. "All by yourself again." Her friend, a blonde woman in a red dress, smirked. "Couldn't find anyone willing to join you. Even for your sister's wedding." I forced a polite smile. "I am perfectly fine attending solo, thank you." Catherine leaned toward her friends, lowering her voice just enough that I could still hear. "He tried to convince Grandpa there was some computer emergency this morning. On the wedding day. Can you imagine?" The three of them laughed, looking at me with a mixture of amusement and pity. I felt heat rising in my face, but maintained my composure. Amanda's day, I reminded myself. This is Amanda's day. "Excuse me," I said, stepping past them with as much dignity as I could muster. I considered leaving early. I had fulfilled my brotherly obligation by attending the ceremony, and Amanda was swept up in the celebration, unlikely to notice my absence. As I contemplated a quiet exit, commotion near the head table caught my attention. Stanley Wright was standing, phone pressed to his ear, his expression grave. Thomas leaned toward him with concern, while other family members exchanged worried glances. After a moment, Stanley handed his phone to Richard, who listened intently before his face paled. I watched as a man in a dark suit, likely their head of security, approached the table and engaged in an urgent conversation with Stanley. The elderly man's eyes scanned the room until they landed on me, his expression changing from worry to realization. Stanley whispered something to Thomas, who looked in my direction with surprise. Then, to my astonishment, Stanley Wright stood up from his seat at the head table. The room gradually fell silent as guests noticed the family patriarch rising, assuming he was about to make a toast. Instead, Stanley began walking directly toward me, his cane tapping rhythmically on the marble floor. The room grew completely quiet, hundreds of eyes following his progress across the ballroom. When he reached me standing alone near the edge of the dance floor, Stanley Wright, billionaire, patriarch of one of America's wealthiest families, did the unthinkable. He bowed to me. It wasn't a slight nod or an informal gesture. It was a deliberate, respectful bow, the kind reserved for someone worthy of the highest esteem. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Catherine's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, her eyes wide with shock. "Mr. Marshall," Stanley said, his voice carrying in the silent room, "I owe you an apology and my deepest gratitude." I stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Stanley turned to address the confused guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you properly to Roosevelt Marshall, brother of our beautiful bride. Many of you may not know this, but Mr. Marshall is one of the foremost cybersecurity experts in the country." The murmurs grew louder. Amanda was beaming from the head table, while Thomas looked both surprised and impressed. "This morning," Stanley continued, "Roosevelt detected a sophisticated cyber attack targeting our family company, an attack our own security teams missed completely. When we dismissed his concerns," Stanley glanced pointedly at Catherine, "he took it upon himself to neutralize the threat." Stanley placed a hand on my shoulder. "I just received confirmation from our security team. This young man single-handedly prevented the theft of over $12 million and protected the personal financial data of everyone in this room." The silence broke as guests began to whisper among themselves, some looking at me with new interest, others checking their phones as if suddenly concerned about their accounts. "Roosevelt Marshall," Stanley's voice rose again, commanding attention. "That man saved our entire legacy." The room erupted in applause. Amanda rushed from the head table to embrace me, tears streaming down her face. Thomas followed, extending his hand with genuine respect. "Why didn't you tell me it was this serious?" Amanda whispered. "It was your wedding day," I replied simply. "I didn't want to worry you." As the applause continued, Stanley raised his hand for silence. "In light of what Roosevelt has done for our family, I am moving him to the family table where he belongs." He turned to me. That is, if you will accept. Overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of my status, I could only nod. As Stanley led me to the head table, I passed Catherine, whose face had turned an interesting shade of crimson. James stood nearby, looking like he had swallowed something unpleasant. "Mr. Marshall," Catherine said stiffly as I passed, "it seems we owe you an apology." "Yes," James added, not quite meeting my eyes, "we misjudged you." "Severely." I could have enjoyed their discomfort, could have reminded them of their mockery from earlier. Instead, I simply nodded and continued toward the family table. Their validation wasn't what mattered to me. What mattered was the pride in Amanda's eyes, the respectful nod from Thomas, and the knowledge that I had protected my sister's new family despite their initial rejection. As I took my new seat beside Stanley Wright, I realized that sometimes being underestimated is the perfect position from which to prove your worth. The remainder of the reception passed in a surreal blur. One moment I was the outsider being mocked near the kitchen, and the next I was seated at the family table between Stanley and Amanda's maid of honor. Guests who had earlier avoided eye contact now approached to introduce themselves, many asking for my business card or offering congratulations. Stanley tapped his glass for attention and stood to deliver what everyone assumed would be the traditional father of the groom speech. Instead, he began with an unexpected announcement. "Before I toast the happy couple, I must share something important with all of you. Many of you are investors, partners, or clients of Wright Hotels." He paused, his expression solemn. "Today, while we were celebrating, criminals attempted to breach our financial systems in what our security team is calling the most sophisticated attack they have ever seen." Concerned murmurs spread through the crowd. Had this attack succeeded, it would have exposed sensitive financial information of everyone who has stayed at our properties. It would have compromised our company's accounts during a critical expansion phase. In short, Stanley's voice grew heavy, it would have destroyed what 3 generations of Wrights have built. He gestured toward me. Roosevelt here not only detected the attack that our expensive security systems missed, but he also neutralized it without disrupting today's celebrations. Our team has confirmed that the attack originated from a competitor hoping to destabilize us enough to force a sale. Richard Wright, who had been relatively quiet until now, stepped forward. "Our security team estimates the potential damage at upwards of $20 million, not counting the incalculable damage to our reputation had client data been compromised." Thomas stood next, his arm around Amanda. "Roosevelt, when Amanda first told me about her brilliant brother, I admit I didn't fully appreciate what she meant. Today you protected not just our company, but my future with your sister." He raised his glass. "To Roosevelt, the unsung hero of our wedding day." The room echoed with "To Roosevelt," as hundreds of glasses rose in my honor. My face burned with embarrassment, but Amanda squeezed my hand under the table, her expression one of pure pride. Catherine approached our table after the toasts, her composure restored but her customary confidence noticeably diminished. "Roosevelt," she said loud enough for those nearby to hear, "I behaved terribly toward you and I was wrong. What I said near the kitchen was inexcusable. I hope you can forgive my rudeness." I could see the effort it took her to make this public apology. "Of course," I replied. Under different circumstances, I might have been skeptical too. James followed his sister's example, approaching with his wife. "We misjudged you based on, well, superficial things. Thank you for being bigger than our pettiness." As the evening progressed, I found myself in conversation with people who actually seemed interested in my work and experiences. A venture capitalist offered his card, mentioning potential investment opportunities. A university dean discussed their cybersecurity program. Even Stanley's friend Charles Winfield, who had dismissed me that morning, engaged me in a lengthy discussion about modern security threats. The most surprising conversation came from Sophia Reyes, the art curator for Wright Hotels, who approached me during dessert. "I have been watching you," she said, taking the seat beside me. "You went from pariah to hero in the span of an hour, yet you seem almost uncomfortable with the attention." Her directness caught me off guard. I am not used to being the center of attention, I admitted. That is refreshing in this crowd, she replied with a smile that reached her dark, intelligent eyes. Most people here would sell their grandmother for the kind of recognition you are getting tonight. We talked for nearly an hour about everything except cybersecurity, art, literature, our favorite hidden spots in Seattle. For the first time that day, I wasn't Roosevelt the cybersecurity expert or Roosevelt the bride's brother, but just Roosevelt, a person worth knowing for himself. As the celebration continued into the night, I danced with Amanda, toasted with Thomas, and even taught Stanley some basics about personal digital security. The right family members who had once looked through me now looked to me, including me in photos and conversations, as if I had always been part of their circle. Near midnight, as the party began to wind down, Amanda found me on the terrace, gazing at the same stars I had observed with Stanley the previous night. "Some wedding, huh?" she said, joining me at the railing. "You look beautiful," I told her honestly. "Are you happy?" "Deliriously," she confirmed. "Though I am a bit miffed that you stole my thunder on my wedding day." Her teasing smile took any sting from the words. "I tried to tell them this morning," I protested with a laugh. "I know," she grew serious. "You have always looked out for me, Roosevelt. Since we were kids. Now you have saved my new family, too." "I just did what I am good at," I shrugged. "No," Amanda shook her head. "You did what you are good at even when everyone dismissed you. Even when they mocked you. That takes more than skill, it takes character." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment before she added, "I saw you talking with Sophia. She is brilliant, you know. Single too." I felt my face warm. "We were just talking." "MMHMM," Amanda hummed skeptically. "She asked me about you. Specifically, she asked if you were always so intriguingly humble or if it was just an act." "What did you tell her?" "I told her my brother has never needed to act. That your brilliance and your kindness are just who you are." She kissed my cheek. "And I told her you would be here all weekend." As Amanda returned to her new husband, I remained on the terrace, processing the day's incredible reversal. From outsider to hero, from mockery to respect, all because I had simply done what I knew was right, regardless of recognition. The stars seemed brighter somehow, the night air fresher. For the first time since arriving at the right estate, I felt like I could breathe freely. Sometimes I realized, being underestimated is not a curse, but an opportunity to show your true worth in the most unexpected ways. The morning after the wedding, I woke to a text message from Stanley Wright requesting a private meeting in his suite at 10 o'clock. Despite the late night, I arrived precisely on time, curious about what the Wright patriarch wanted to discuss. Stanley's suite occupied the entire top floor of the East Wing, with panoramic views of the ocean and the estate grounds. He greeted me warmly, looking more relaxed in casual attire than he had in his formal wear. "Roosevelt, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to a seating area where coffee and breakfast pastries had been arranged. "I thought we should have a proper conversation, now that the excitement has settled somewhat." As we settled into comfortable chairs, Stanley poured coffee for both of us. "I owe you a more thorough explanation," he began. "What I told you about the wedding being important for business reasons was only part of the truth." Stanley set down his cup, his expression turning serious. Wright Hotels has been facing significant financial challenges for the past 5 years. The pandemic hit us particularly hard, and recovery has been slower than projected. We have been keeping up appearances, but the reality is that we were approaching a critical decision point. "What kind of decision?" I asked. "Whether to sell majority control to outside investors or risk bankruptcy within 18 months, Stanley admitted. This wedding was not just a family celebration. It was also our best opportunity to secure the investments needed to stay afloat. Many key potential investors were in attendance, evaluating not just our properties, but the strength and stability of our family leadership. I began to understand the magnitude of what I had prevented. So the cyber attack would have been catastrophic, Stanley finished. Had those funds been stolen, Had our clients' data been exposed during an event meant to showcase our competence and security, it would have ended any chance of securing the investments we needed. We would have been forced to sell at a fraction of our value, and hundreds of employees would have lost their jobs. The weight of his words hung in the air between us. Our security team has completed their analysis, Stanley continued. They confirmed your assessment. The attack was orchestrated by Meridian Luxury Properties through several layers of cutouts. Their CEO has been trying to acquire us for years. Have you contacted the authorities? I asked. We have provided evidence to the FBI, Stanley nodded. But the more important question is how we can adequately thank you. Before I could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. Stanley called for them to enter, and Richard Wright walked in, followed by Catherine and James. The siblings looked uncomfortable, a stark contrast to their usual confidence. Perfect timing, Stanley said. Please join us. As they took seats, I noticed how different they appeared from the previous day. Catherine's perfect composure seemed fractured, while James fidgeted with his watch, avoiding eye contact. I was just explaining to Roosevelt the true stakes of yesterday's events, Stanley told them. I believe you all have something to add. Richard spoke first, his businesslike demeanor softened by genuine gratitude. Roosevelt, I want to personally apologize for dismissing your concerns yesterday morning. Had I listened, we could have addressed the situation with far less risk. My focus on the wedding's appearances blinded me to a real threat. I understand, I said. It was a big day for your family. Catherine cleared her throat. My behavior was inexcusable, she said directly. When I saw you arrive alone, I made judgments based on nothing but shallow social standards. Then I mocked you for trying to help. She looked me in the eye for perhaps the first time. The truth is, I was stressed about the wedding being perfect because I knew about the financial situation. I took that stress out on you, and I was wrong. James nodded in agreement. We have been taught since childhood to project success and confidence, even when things are falling apart. When you showed up talking about security breaches, it threatened the perfect image we needed to maintain. Instead of listening, we attacked you, Catherine added. It is a reflex we have developed. When faced with problems, we dismiss the messenger. Their honesty surprised me. I had expected polite apologies, not this level of self-reflection. The Wright family has always valued appearance over substance, Stanley admitted. It served us well in the hotel business, where perception is crucial. But yesterday, that priority nearly cost us everything. Richard leaned forward. Roosevelt, my father has proposed something I fully support. We would like to offer you a position as Chief Security Officer for Wright Hotels, with complete authority to overhaul our systems and approaches. The offer caught me off guard. I appreciate that, but I have a job I enjoy in Seattle. We are prepared to be flexible, Richard countered. A consulting role, perhaps, with compensation commensurate with the value you have already provided. I considered the offer. I could consider a consulting arrangement, working remotely with periodic visits to evaluate systems. Excellent, Stanley said, seeming genuinely pleased. We will have our legal team draft an agreement for your review. As the meeting concluded and I prepared to leave, Catherine stopped me at the door. There is something else you should know, she said quietly. When I made those comments about you being alone, it came from my own insecurity. My husband and I are separating, but I insisted he attend the wedding to maintain appearances. She gave a bitter laugh. I mocked you for coming alone while my own marriage was falling apart. The irony is not lost on me. Her vulnerability was unexpected. I am sorry about your marriage, I said sincerely. The point is, Catherine continued, in the Wright family, we are experts at judging others for the very things we fear in ourselves. Thank you for showing us a better way. Later that afternoon, I met Thomas and Amanda for lunch before they departed for their honeymoon. Thomas seemed different, more relaxed than I had ever seen him. I want to thank you again, he said as we ate. Not just for saving the company, but for giving me perspective. What do you mean? I asked. Thomas glanced at Amanda before explaining. I have been under enormous pressure to project the perfect right image. Every decision, from my career to who I married, has been evaluated through the lens of how it would appear to others. He took Amanda's hand. When I fell in love with your sister, my family was concerned that she wasn't from our social circle. They eventually accepted her because she is wonderful, but there were discussions about how to present her to society. Amanda nodded. It was subtle but always there. Suggestions about how I should dress, speak, which of my accomplishments to emphasize. What you did yesterday, Thomas continued, showed me and my entire family that substance matters more than appearance. You were not who they expected to save the day, but you were exactly who we needed. As we finished lunch, Thomas added one final thought. The greatest gift you have given me, beyond saving my family's company, is the freedom to be judged by my actions rather than my image. That is something I hope to pay forward. Walking back to my room after lunch, I reflected on how dramatically things had changed in just 24 hours. The Wright family, who had initially dismissed me based on superficial judgments, now looked to me with respect and even gratitude. More importantly, they seemed to be reconsidering the values that had led them to make those judgments in the first place. Sometimes I realized the greatest victory is not in proving others wrong, but in helping them see a better way forward. 6 months have passed since Amanda's wedding, and my life has transformed in ways I never anticipated. After careful consideration, I accepted a part-time consulting role with Wright Hotels, overseeing their cybersecurity infrastructure while maintaining my primary position in Seattle. The arrangement allows me to visit their properties quarterly for system reviews, giving me the best of both worlds. The changes within the Wright family have been even more remarkable. Following the cyberattack revelation, Stanley initiated a company-wide shift in priorities, emphasizing substance and integrity over appearances. Richard has taken a more active role in daily operations, working closely with Thomas to modernize their approach to business. Catherine, perhaps most surprisingly, has undergone the most visible transformation. After finalizing her divorce, she enrolled in a cybersecurity certification program, determined to understand the field that saved her family's legacy. We now have monthly video calls where I mentor her through the technical challenges. The woman who once mocked me for coming alone to the wedding now regularly seeks my advice and perspective. James has shifted his focus from social networking to actually improving guest experiences at their hotels, implementing several innovations that have received industry recognition. He recently confessed that he had always been interested in hotel operations, but had focused on the glamorous aspects of the business to meet family expectations. My relationship with Stanley has evolved into a genuine friendship. Despite our age difference, we connect through our shared appreciation for doing the right thing, even when it is not the easy thing. He has become something of a mentor to me, sharing wisdom gained from a lifetime of business experience. Perhaps the most unexpected development has been my relationship with Sophia Reyes. What began as an intriguing conversation at the wedding reception has blossomed into something meaningful. Our shared love of art, literature, and quiet evenings has created a connection unlike any I have experienced before. She appreciates my analytical mind, but encourages me to explore the creative side I had long neglected. When I visit New York for my consulting work, we explore museums and hidden bookshops together, discovering new dimensions of the city and ourselves. Last month, Amanda and Thomas visited Seattle, and as we sat in my apartment overlooking the city, my sister pulled me aside. You seem different, she observed, studying my face. Happier. I had to agree. The painful isolation I had felt walking into that wedding alone had been replaced by a sense of connection that extended beyond romantic relationships. I had found my place not just with Sophia, but within a network of genuine relationships built on mutual respect rather than social expectations. The Wright family has changed too, Amanda added. Thomas says board meetings actually discuss substance now instead of just appearances. Stanley quotes you all the time. Roosevelt says we should focus on building walls that work rather than walls that merely look impressive. We laughed together, remembering how differently things might have turned out. The journey from that moment of mockery near the kitchen to where I am now has taught me something profound. Our greatest strength often lies in staying true to ourselves, especially when others fail to see our value. Had I abandoned my instincts in the face of the right family's dismissal, had I walked away rather than persisting in what I knew was right, the outcome would have been catastrophic for all involved. The world is full of people who will judge you based on superficial criteria. Whether you come alone to an event, what your job title suggests about your worth, how well you fit into predetermined social categories. But those judgments say far more about the judges than they do about you. True respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned through actions that demonstrate your character and competence. When you remain authentic in the face of dismissal, when you contribute your unique strengths without requiring immediate recognition, you create the opportunity for genuine connection that transcends social posturing. I entered that wedding as an outsider, mocked for coming alone. I left with something far more valuable than social approval. I left with the knowledge that being underestimated can sometimes be your greatest advantage. It gives you the space to exceed expectations, to surprise those who judged you prematurely, and to demonstrate your worth through actions rather than appearances. Sometimes the most powerful response to mockery is neither retaliation nor retreat, but simply continuing to be your best self, allowing your actions to speak the truth that others are not yet ready to hear. In doing so, you not only change how others see you, you may change how they see themselves. As for me, I no longer fear walking into rooms alone. I know now that true connection comes not from conforming to others' expectations, but from having the courage to bring your authentic self to every situation, whether others initially value it or not. Sometimes the most lonely moments can lead to the most profound connections, if we have the patience and perseverance to let our true character emerge. Have you ever been judged unfairly only to prove everyone wrong later? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more experiences that might help you navigate your own challenging moments. Remember, sometimes being underestimated is just the opportunity you need to show your true value. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to be authentically yourself, even when standing alone.